I think people very much overestimate the value of ideas and underestimate the value of taking small, meaningful action. Yeah, so that's my answer, you know, to my response to everyone in Montenegro who is close to my heart, the whole country, the people, especially the young people who I think are brilliant. My message to them is, don't worry about the big fishes. Take a small step and see where that can take you.
That's why if you ever get your ego bruised, the best thing you can do is follow like a cat. Follow with style, brave, good. Like, I got this.
There's only one way to take it, and that's hard, man. There's only one way to own it. She wanna drown in the city lights. But it's alright. If she wanna make a mistake, you better let her, man. You've gotta learn what it takes.
Digitalizacija, digitalna transformacija, automatizacija, procesi su koji svaka kompanija danas mora da integriše u svoj rad. Internet je značajno promijenio globalnu poslovnu paradigmu, a na pomolu su mnogi novi procesi koji će neminovno uticati na biznis modele u budućnosti. You often say that business is profoundly human to human. Why is this still relevant in the modern world that has been deeply marked by expansive technological development and the emergence of artificial intelligence?
What we are perceiving at the moment is we figure this factor, artificial intelligence, which is currently being handled as an innovation factor, will actually pretty quickly become an infrastructural factor, because the best AI out there is open source at the moment and it's accessible to everyone. And so it won't be a source of competitive advantage. It will be a source of, the cost of entry to even be allowed to participate. We will have to have AI-driven analytical systems. So then the question is, where does competitive advantage come from? And our perception is it will come from the ability of our human talent to think generatively, creatively, empathetically, and produce superior value to others. So it really comes down to the question, what is it that I'm offering? Where did it come from? What is it for? How is it going to contribute to your life or the life of the market that I'm serving? And I think right now, the public discourse is not really looking at that yet. We're talking about replacing human beings. We talk about merging human beings with artificial intelligence. But we're not really paying attention to the unique intelligence that the human being in its biological form and its social form has. And that's where we're currently placing our bet. That's the most current emergence that we're basically focusing on. What are the basics of business? Business is profoundly human to human, in essence. Why? Business is the act of action, interaction, transaction between human beings in order to create value and development, betterment for everyone involved. That's what business is in essence. So I always like to quote Peter Drucker, who was a great management thinker, who in a conference on organizational structure was asked what he thinks is the best structure for a modern organization. And he answered, after a short pause, he answered, for you to have a business, someone, somewhere, at some point needs to buy something from you. And then he shut up. Which basically means the basic, in essence, once you create value, then we can talk about having a business. But if you look at the last 300 years of organizations, the way we secure our market position is actually not necessarily through superior value. It's through superior execution, it's through superior positioning, it's through better marketing, advertising. So, and these are all human intelligence driven in a way over the past 300 years. If we look now at the trend of artificial intelligence replacing this and replacing this human intelligence in these processes and formulating the best, if you like, the most rational solution for each of these. What we get is we get a level of parity on the execution. We get a level of parity, we get equality between every organization that employs similar AI. We will get a certain degree of efficiency in all of these, right?
Speaking of efficiency, you stress that it is very important to discern efficiency from effectiveness. Why?
Yeah, I think this is a good way to put it. So a lot of organizations are trying to compete on the basis of efficiency, which is the question, how many resources do I use in creating the thing I want to create? A lot of organizations have actually lost out of sight the importance of effectiveness. I've actually, in a German car manufacturer, someone once said to me, after we looked into these two terms, he said to me, I feel we have betrayed effectiveness for efficiency. What's the difference? Effectiveness is the question, Am I achieving the thing I want to achieve? Efficiency is the question. With how many resources am I achieving this? So AI will revolutionize our effectiveness, for sure. You know, it's already now better in solving complex problems than we are in rule-based analytical problems, the best AI out there. So that will revolutionize that. But because AI is available for everyone, efficiency will simply not become a mean of competing anymore. This will be on equal level. This will be on parity. So what it comes down to is the question of effectiveness. And what determines effectiveness in business is value. How good is the value you're creating? You know? How attractive is that value to the marketplace? And value creation has a lot to do with meaning, contextuality, relatedness. So these are things that are extremely human. They come down to, do I feel your needs? Do I understand what's around you? Can I project to you a kind of new way of being that is attractive to you, that you want to go into? It's reality as we create it. It's not reality as we analyze it. You know, it's something we're creating together. And that no AI is in the position to do that anywhere near, I would say, over the next 50 to 100 years. Maybe I'm, you know, also being too pessimistic or too optimistic in that way. But that space, that space there, this profoundly human space, is what will become the role of human beings in organizations. And the better we can do that, the better we will compete on the marketplace, which means the better we can leverage this human factor in our organization, the better our chances to be competing effectively. And there's an American scientist or an American academic, Nicholas Carr, who published in the late 90s, early 2000, he published a paper called IT Doesn't Matter. And it was a paper that during a time when all companies were rushing out to introduce new data centers, IT infrastructure, you know, he basically wrote this paper and he argued that all of these managers and CEOs are running out to build big data centers and introduce IT into the systems, thinking it will give them competitive advantage for the next 10, 15 years. But he said, actually, as everyone follows, the technology is the same. The computer is the same in everyone's room, you know. He argued that IT will become an infrastructural technology in a much shorter period than those 10, 15 years assumed by others. So the same argument you could now place on the topic of artificial intelligence.
Here at J2C, you have been passionately empowering human potential, human intelligence, human factor. How do you actually do that?
Whatever we do on the marketplace, that's cool. But J2C itself should also do something for the human being. And the image we often used is, we said, J2C is like a Sangha, you know, like a Buddhist circle of learners and meditators. The idea was we want to have a system, we want to have an organization where the relationships are real, they're profound, where the relationships are human, and where everyone becomes a mirror for the other one in the organization. So why am I mentioning the relationships? Because we are a system, an organization that builds on conflict, positive conflict, not negative conflict. I'm not talking about screaming, yelling, dominating. I'm talking about the true meaning of the word, which means to meet, you know, to truly meet, you know, to strike together. And for that to be positive and not negative, so not focused on domination, but focused on growth and learning, the relationships need to be strong. And at J2C, we try to be as honest as we can with one another, which is the bit that tries to cultivate a mindset amongst each of us. What's that mindset we're trying to cultivate? It's what we call an entrepreneurial mindset. The name is, I'm a fan of the name, but actually, you know, it can be a bit misleading because it's not about starting your own business. You know, when we talk about an entrepreneurial mindset, what we talk about is about a mindset that recognizes our own potential to create the world that we want to live in, not just react to the world that we're living in. And at J2C, in the human-to-human interaction, that's really, apart from the work we do for the client, that's the absolute highest heuristic we have here. Whatever you do, try to cultivate yourself in that power and try to cultivate the person across from you in that power. So that's, it maybe sounds a little cheesy or it sounds great, but actually it's very difficult. It's a very difficult process because most of us, we get caught up in our, what we call mental traps. You know, we get caught up in an attitude of victimhood. We get caught up in regret about mistakes we've made. You know, we get caught up in fears about things that are about to come up. We get caught up in greed when we think nobody can stop us, you know. So in this system, we try to regulate these, what we call mental traps, constantly. And to facilitate that process, we've introduced all kinds of little, how would I call this, initiatives, that are supposed to help people not just find, but cultivate their own strength. That includes, yoga classes, meditation is an important part of this. We have certain heuristics in the way that we interact with one another that are meant to be helping in conflict situations to build trust and remember the trust we have for one another, and structure the dealing with topics in a way that doesn't lead to clashes but actually leads to merging of information, which is very important, because usually when we conflict, I want to impose my view on you, and here we try to get rid of that. And of course the way we are organized also really plays into that. Maybe I should add, for us, what's our business? We go into organizations and we help them overcome the challenges and barriers that they're facing, and we help them transform their mindsets and their culture. It's nice to package that kind of work in methodologies and frameworks, but in the end, it's the relationship between the human beings, and it's the transfer of a paradigm or worldview that makes a difference. In other words, our business stands and falls with the people that we have and the willingness of the people that we have to work on themselves. So, and to work with each other, So that's where we basically emphasize why we emphasize the human factor so much, because, it's the source of our competitive advantage, in our case, for real, today.
In order to enable human potential, agency J2C has been organized as Holohe. What is Holohe?
The word Holohe is a word that was constructed by systems thinkers in the 60s, as far as I know, and it's based on the Greek word holon, which means to be whole in yourself, but at the same time part of a larger whole. Like a cell in the body is in itself complete, but at the same time part of a bigger self. So if you look at traditional hierarchies, usually the parts are segregated and separate, and one part can never capture all functions within the system. So you have a strategic function, you have an operational function, you have a sales function, you have a marketing function. They're all separate. And I do my function here and I pass it on. In a Holohe, the ideology is that each unit in the organization, in our case it's a human being, should be able to cover all aspects of the organization within themselves. Right? So they should be able to think strategically, they should be able to think in terms of value, they should be able to sell to the customer, to deliver to the customer, to work with one another, etc., etc. So I call it the ideology, because really to reach that level is quite difficult to achieve. But just the intention to tend towards that leads to new forms of organization. So that's the intention we have. We want to enable everyone in our organization to make the decisions that an entrepreneur or a CEO would be able to make, or a consultant with a client, or someone that sits in HR and decides whether certain personal development things should be approved or not, or someone that sits in finance and decides where the budget should go or not.
In your experience, what are the main advantages of Holohe?
So the obvious advantages of a Holohe is that if the staff buys into the mindset needed to function a system like this, you get a whole nother level of participation, creativity, a whole nother level of engagement with the challenges at hand, because people treat every challenge as if it's their own. People treat every client engagement as if it's their own, and that's one of the obvious benefits. One of the not so obvious benefits is the way that people develop during engagements or work in a Holohe. What almost blows my mind, I can say, really, is to see how people come into the organization. They take some time to find their place, and then I would think 6 months' time, slow down, give them some time to arrive. But 6 months, 7 months into it, they're suddenly running engagements with clients, or they're coming up with a new framework, or they're coming up with new methodologies, or they're organizing events in here for our staff or for people out there. I wouldn't get that if I would control the system, because if I control the system, I only get what I know. And this way I get to learn what I didn't know, which is a beautiful thing.
What about challenges? There must be some challenges involved.
And the challenges around Holohe are also quite present, especially because at the moment, I think, as humanity, we're still trying to explore and understand what does it mean to organize ourselves in that way, in a holochic way. We don't have a blueprint yet. We're still experimenting. So By far the biggest challenge I see is the matter of mindset. We've been cultivated to shut up and listen, to follow orders, to think in a standardized, conventional way, to doubt our own ability to shape things. You know, we have a saying in German, which translates into your student years are not master's years. So until you are on the top, you're at the bottom, basically. And I think this is such a strong image for the mindset that we cultivate in a lot of people, which is a mindset of passivity. You know, it's a mindset of doubt. It's a mindset of lack of engagement. You know, and I call it lack of engagement. It's not to blame the people that have the mindset, but to say this is a barrier that people have to overcome. And that's a good challenge. That's a really good challenge, because it's scary to acknowledge we're powerful. Because what happens is the space for excuses is lost. You know, if I realize that I can shape my environment, I can shape reality, then suddenly complaining about my environment no longer is viable, because I can actually get going. I can change something about it. So stepping into that attitude is not easy, because it requires the courage and it requires the faith and the self-love to do that. And we've seen people struggle with that at first. And given the way our system is structured, we really try to give maximum freedom with minimum structure. That's not to say we don't have any structure. Humans need structure to orientate themselves, but we try to give the maximum space possible to people, which also means there's the minimum amount of orientation around. You know, I need to find my own space. And we've seen people struggle with that in the past, for sure. They came in and they didn't know where to start, and they got insecure about what they were doing. Is it valuable? Is it not? Is it wanted? Is it not? And that can really be a negative spiral if we don't watch out. That's why I mentioned, you know, it's so important to, in a holarchic system, make sure you cultivate strong relationships, because the good relationship is the basis to get people out of that mindset and into that self-acceptance. And I want to say it again, when I talk about this mindset thing, it's something that each of us is capable of. It's not either you have it or you don't. It's nothing genetic. The biggest barrier to it is to have faith in ourselves, which to me, in a way, is crazy, because you would think in the cocky, arrogant, turbo-capitalistic world we have, everyone is full of themselves. But when you look in essence, actually, when we're presented with a blank canvas, the fewest people dare to, you know, to draw the first line. So, and that's a matter of faith in oneself and faith in the goodness of what I'm doing. So, yeah, that's one of the major challenges definitely we have. Not just us, but I think Holohe as such as.
Your agency is called JTC, Journey to Creation, because you have been taking your clients, corporations, companies, organizations, to evolutionary journeys. So you help them to transform themselves, to develop innovative ideas, to address certain challenges. How do you actually achieve this? Could you give us some examples?
We have an entrepreneurship program that runs over 12 months with a corporation, actually, with a company, where they send us 80 to 100 employees every year. They come into our space for a year. They don't stay with us for a year. They have 12 touch points over the year with us. So they come from all over Germany. And in those touch points, we work with them on mindset, opportunity discovery, value offering design, system design, pitching, communication, and so on. And I love that program for the completeness that it brings. I love the program for what it has achieved also with our clients. So to give you an idea, the reason why they send their employees to us is because they expect to generate revenue out of the ideas that are produced in this program within 1 year of completion of the program. And the rule of thumb is they want to achieve around 2.5 million per idea over 2 years time span. So in this program, when we first ran it, it was a completely intellectual program. It had everything you need for entrepreneurship, but it was conceptual. So we ran it, and we had an intake of about 80 or 90 people, and the results were just okay. And we realized after the first year it's too intellectual. We need to make it experiential. So we did that, and in the second year it got better, but it was still not where we wanted it to be. And so we got back and we asked ourselves, what is it that we're doing here? What is it that we're dealing with? Why aren't we achieving the results that we want to see? And we realized what I was mentioning to you about mindset. We realized that the people that are coming to us, they're not entrepreneurs, they're employees. They're brought to us in order to cultivate that entrepreneurial mindset. But that means their mindset has, for years, been cultivated to be the opposite. So what we need to do, next to teaching them about the mindset on paper, next to giving them the methods and tools, we need to allow them to really connect to themselves and feel their own power and their own intelligence also, beyond just the intellect, you know, the bodily intelligence, the intuition, the emotional intelligence. So what we started doing in this program is, and we realized that stress was a big factor for these guys because they were working 80-hour weeks. So there are many studies that show that when you're stressed, your creative potential goes down. So what we did is we tied into this program that is a very hard, facts-driven entrepreneurship program. We started to tie in soft aspects such as qigong, meditation, breath work, what we call sound journeys, where it's a mixture of hypno-meditative storytelling and improvised music. We started to introduce these things, and the program, just the impact that the program suddenly started to have was phenomenal. We've run this program now for about 5 years, and we've generated for our client with this program specifically around 200 million in new business, euros, in new business over the last 5 years. That's given the first 2 years weren't so hot. So I really love the program for that. And I think, you know, we do things in this program such as, I remember the first day with us, we showed them the entrepreneurial mindset, which is a model we have that you can also find easily on the internet because I talk about it all the time. But we show them this model and everyone looks at it and says, yeah, I get it. Okay, yeah, I should be ready to experiment. Of course, you know, I should act purpose-oriented. No problem. You know, I shouldn't be afraid of uncertainty. Got it, you know? And what we do next then is we give everyone one pen, like a basic pen, you know? And we tell them you have 60 minutes to leave the building, go out, and come back with more value than this pen. And suddenly this conceptual stuff becomes experiential. What? Now I need to experiment. What? Now I need to define my own environment. I need to define what value is. I need to engage with people. I need to, you know, I need to face my fears, you know. And I love the faces before and after, you know, when they come in before and they go, yeah, I understand everything, you know. And then they go out and you see the faces on the street, just eyes wide open, scared, you know, grown people, you know. When they come back, the relief they experience, it's very rewarding, that bit. And then, of course, the results we achieve is also very rewarding, which is wonderful. So I love that program.
So you have been transforming companies basically by facilitating both professional and personal change of some of their employees.
Right. So the cool thing is these guys that come to us, they're not entrepreneurs and residents. They are employees of these companies, and they continue to do the day job 100% of the time. And what they do with us is an add-on. So they do that on the side. Now think about this. These are people that, you know, from a traditional transformation point of view, you would say they don't have the right mindset, they don't have the right skill set. If we want to innovate, we have to bring in new people, different people, right? Because these guys are the traditionalists, they're the laggards, they're the people that are behind. But you can see the potential that we're leaving on the table at the moment. When we can take these people and within 4 years generate 200 million in bottom line, additional revenue from new opportunities. So not, you know, a little more efficiency here, a little more effectiveness there. We take the same product, we sell it to someone else. We're talking about new stuff, you know. So I think that's super impressive, and it speaks for the power of humans and organizations and how little of that we're still leveraging. And this is, you know, on paper, an organization that's not. They don't have innovation written on their name. You know, they're quite they're established company, have lots to lose. You know. They do very good work in what they do, so they're very professional, but they have lots to lose, and they dare to go into that space, and yeah, it's been enjoyed to watch. And we don't do anything in there, in the sense of we don't give them the ideas, we don't execute the ideas for them, we just guide them through the process. They develop the ideas, we challenge them, they execute the steps they need to take, we challenge them, you know, help to guide them, but that's it, they do all the work. So it's really from within, it's not, you know, we're just creating the space, they fill it, you know. Which is, again, it's very rewarding. You can tell I love that program. I could talk day and night about it. It's very nice.
Let's say that apart from this main work, which is, so to say, J2C's mission, you support artists whose creative vision is in tune with J2C's vision and its values. How did you come up with this initiative?
The work we do with J2C, I think, is good, honest work. But accessibility of that work is currently limited to organizations and the people that work for them. And that particular target audience also requires a particular mode of interaction, a certain language that you need to choose, a certain behavioral spectrum that's possible. that beyond that spectrum, then we become no longer understandable by the client, you know. Our background as a company and as individuals in this company, we have a very diverse group of people in our company, and the fewest are actually from the corporate world. So in a way, and I'm going to give you both sides here, yeah? In a way, the radius of expression in the daily work that we do doesn't cover 100% of the radius of expression that each of us has in them. So at one point we figured it would be beautiful to have a channel or some kind of, a means to which we can express the other 30-40% that lives within us in a way that's free and wild. But really, and that's where Welcome to the New World comes in to some extent, but really where it comes in, and that's, I think, the driving force and why we've also put so much money into it so far, and why we feel it's an important part of what we do. We figure the business we are in predominantly is shifting mindset and shifting culture. And I am convinced that the way we've lived for the last 300 years, we cannot continue like that. Be that because of global warming, be that because of the migration, north-south, you know, east-west, soon west-east, you know, and the way we're handling race, the way we're handling women in our society, or the position of, you know, the equality of men and women. I think we have a lot of work to do. And I think, you know, in the 80s, there was a paper published by a Japanese academic that kind of broadly, Japanese-American, that broadly proclaimed we have reached the end of history. Yeah, the assumption that we have now reached a perfect system. From now on, humanity will live in bliss. But actually, we realize now we're nowhere near to the end of history. We're near to the end of our history if we don't do something, you know. We're near to that. But I think it's very clear that what we've reached over the last 300 years is just one more station on our evolutionary journey. So we have amazing technological advances that we've seen in the last 15, 20 years, and that will be coming up now. I mean, if you look at the stuff that Elon Musk does with Neuralink, for example, that's sci-fi stuff. That's incredible. But how will we use this technology? That's the core question. What will we do with it? It all depends on how we see ourselves, how we perceive our role on this planet, how we perceive our context, and how we perceive the meaning and the purpose of our social togetherness. So the technological revolution that we're going through right now, I think, can only be fully positive if it's accompanied by a revolution in consciousness and awareness, effectively in mindset, and with that in culture. So we asked ourselves, you know, yeah, okay, we're currently addressing the mindsets, the culture, the consciousness, the awareness in organizations, but how do you transform a planet? You know, and I'm not implying that we are setting out to transform the planet, but it's something that we want to contribute towards, make a positive contribution. And we figure, well, what changes mindset, what changes consciousness is art, is media. What shifts culture is media. Media makes culture. So we figured we'd love to establish a company that exists to enable artists that, in our view, have a planetarian vision, so a vision of a planetary society, a vision of humanity living in tune and in balance with planet Earth, where humanity realizes that our planet is our mother, is our Earth, is our home, is the thing that birthed all of us, you know, while also embracing technological advancement, while also embracing social advancement, while also embracing all the beautiful things we got from the last, you know, 400, 500 years, 300 years of industrial revolution, and before that, you know, of collective evolution. So that's where Welcome to the New World comes from, and that's why it's also called Welcome to the New World. The idea is that we want to enable artists to produce their creative vision in the most authentic, unadulterated way and bring that to market for them. That's the idea. Speaking of creative visions, what is your personal vision for the future? You know, there's a whole discourse that comes from Silicon Valley that sees us merging with technology in the near future. And then there's even a discourse that suggests that technology will surpass us. Not surpass us, replace us, actually. You know, because the assumption is that we are so inferior to these machines. And that's a discourse that doesn't resonate with me at all, you know. Then there are discourses that say we should go back to a natural life. We're destroying our planet. We should scale down, you know, stop what we're doing and retreat into the lives that our ancestors lived 15, 20,000 years ago, you know, which I can see where they're coming from, but also this discourse to me doesn't make sense. I think a future that I want to see is a future where we embrace our true nature and the beauty and the intelligence that is in biological life that surrounds us, and at the same time embrace the ingenuity of humanity as a tool builder, you know, as a creative technology, as a social creature that wants to keep busy, you know, and wants to create things for one another.
We've heard how J2C has been contributing to the world. I'm curious to know what is your personal contribution to J2C? In other words, what is the unique value you created here?
I think it's that Balkan intensity. You know, it's the Balkan intensity that I bring to the table that probably pisses a lot of people off here often, but also helps us to not be complacent, and it pushes us to challenge who we are also, you know. Many years ago, we did this exercise where people had to draw each other in our company, and someone drew me with 2 swords, you know, and when I asked, what's that? He said, you're Kali, destroyer of worlds, you know, the Indian goddess, you know, because I think another thing I've brought to J2C is the willingness to go into conflict, even when it's difficult, and to cultivate radical honesty. This was definitely already here, but I think the intensity that I bring from our cultural background, you know, has contributed to bringing that to another level. And I think that's something I'm very proud of here at J2C, the way we interact with one another. You know, I think it's a degree of honesty that's rarely found in organizations, probably even rarely found in families, you know. So yeah. So that's probably the best answer I can give you now.
There's only one way to take it, and that's hard, man. There's only one way to own it. She wanna drown in the sea.
Habib Lešević rođen je u Crnoj Gori, ali je odrastao u Njemačkoj i školovao se na prestižnim zapadnoevropskim univerzitetima, gdje je neko vrijeme radio i kao predavač. Rado se vraća Crnoj Gori, Ulcinju, odakle su prije više od 4 decenije njegovi roditelji krenuli u Njemačku na svoje putovanje ka kreaciji. Mladima koji se žale da nemaju novac da ostvare svoje ideje, često priča priču o agenciji J2C, koja je stvorila samu sebe bez kredita, početnog kapitala ili bilo kakvog eksternog finansiranja.
This idea that I need money to start a business is of course not wrong. I need resources to start a business, of course, you know. But the question is, what are you trying to start? You know, if you're sitting in your bedroom and you're thinking about starting the next SpaceX, and you know, in the times between school and football practice, maybe you're just picking the wrong idea for yourself, you know. I mean, you know, if you don't have $500 million sitting around, that's, you know. So a lot of people fall into the logic of, I don't have what I need to start what I want to do, so I'm just going to sit back and wait for it to come, you know. I understand that rationale, but what I used to tell my students at university is, what do you need the money for? Write it down. Which of these things can you get if you hustle, if you try? Relationships, speaking to people. Which of these are non-monetary things you can acquire in non-monetary ways? And then the most important question is, what's the next step you want to take? You know, what's the next step? I mean, you know, today we have 1,200 square meters here on 3 floors and a rooftop. If you would have seen us at the beginning, we were in an old betting office in the ghetto in Berlin, effectively. We had a small space, 90 square meters, and we crammed at one point 15, 20 people into that. There was not enough space for all of our employees. But that's where we started. If I would have said, I want to start J2C, but I need $1 million a year to pay for rent for me to do it, you know, then you wouldn't see J2C. So while I understand the discourse, and it's also a true discourse, it's a disempowering discourse, and we need to become aware of that. And we need to, once we become aware of that, we need to let go of it. And instead ask ourselves, what's the next step I can take from where I am right now? And I think everyone can take a step. That's the beauty of it. You know, everyone can take a step from where you are. But you have to shed that mindset. And I want to address this. I think a lot of the barriers that are perceived, such as we don't have enough money, we don't have access to resources, I don't have connections, I think they don't really hold today anymore. Access to money is actually quite easy. There's a lot of capital on this planet. In Montenegro, you're no longer limited to raising finance in Montenegro. You can raise finance over platforms around the world, from your bedroom actually, you know. access to resources. I mean, the internet has enabled us in terms of knowledge, information, insight, in terms of access to working resources, productive resources. All are given. And they're given at a really low cost, if you like, But what I recognize in this discourse is actually fear of getting started, fear of failure. That's where these things come from. So I encourage everyone who has that in their minds to ask themselves honestly, am I just making up reasons for me not to get going because I'm afraid to fail, I'm afraid to get started, I'm afraid to see what I'm capable of? And if the answer to that is even just a mild yes, ask yourself, what's the next step that I can take? The next step from where I am now. My dad always, if I may give you this little personal story, my dad always says when he came to Germany, the first thing he did is he threw his bags into the flat, he ran up onto the roof, and he sat down on the roof. He closed his eyes and he opened his mouth. For 2 days and 2 nights he was on the roof, he said, until his belly was grumbling. He was so hungry because he had heard, people had told him in Germany, the baked chicken flies straight from heaven into your mouth. He tells the story and he says that after 2 days and 2 nights, I realized, I have to work here. I have to take a step. So he went out and he started to work. And I say, rather than sitting in your room and waiting for someone to throw $500,000 at you so you can start your great idea, take that first step. Take that first step. Take that first step and do a small version of what it is that you want to do. Do an incomplete version of what it is that you want to do. Do an imperfect version of what it is that you want to do. The best programs we have at J2C were developed on the job. And I think the 2 or 3 best that we have that I love the best, I remember the first iteration, we fell right on our nose with it, and but the fact that we did it enabled us to do it. And if we wouldn't have done it, if we would have just thought about it, it would have remained an idea. I think people very much overestimate the value of ideas and underestimate the value of taking small, meaningful action. Yeah, so that's my answer, to my response to everyone in Montenegro who is close to my heart, the whole country, the people, especially the young people who I think are brilliant. My message to them is, don't worry about the big fishes. Take a small step and see where that can take you.
There's only one way to take it, and that's hard, man. There's only one way to own it. She wanna drown in the city lights, but it's alright. If she wanna make a mistake, you better let her, man. You've gotta learn what it takes to keep a good thing from going bad. At least she taking